That's
Yeah. All right. Welcome everyone to Amazon Conservation's first ever update webinar, exclusive to our donors and supporters, where we'll be sharing our latest insights and impacts from across the Amazon. My name is Anna, and I'm the Director of Philanthropy and Communications at Amazon Conservation. You might see some of my emails go into your inbox, and I'll be the one guiding this webinar today. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that a copy of our slides, as well as the recording of this webinar, will be provided to you via email early next week. We're hoping that this webinar can be an opportunity for you to learn more about the work that you are supporting, as well as allow you the space and opportunity to interact with some of our researchers, the scientists, and conservationists that are working hard to maximize the impact of your donations. So we have a fantastic lineup of speakers and conservation advances for you today, which I'm very excited to be sharing. And we'll be presenting this information over the first 30 to 40 minutes. While we're doing that, please feel free to submit your comments and questions in the chat, and we'll be addressing them at the end when we have our Q&A session. So first up, we have some opening remarks from our board member, Doug Sarno, who is also the president of the Forum Facilitation Group and the president at the Participation Company. Doug is recognized throughout the world as an expert with over 30 years of experience as a facilitator, a strategist, a trainer on a wide range of issues. Doug has been a supporter of Amazon Conservation for many years and has been on a board of directors since 2016. Doug, thank you for being here. Please take it away.
Thank you, Anna, and welcome everyone to today's seminar. I really want to thank you not just for joining us today, but for all the support you've provided to the organization over time. As everyone that supports this organization, as well as attends our seminars and is involved in our activities, you're the people who make this whole thing possible, right? Make the whole work we do possible. And we're going to talk a lot about that work here today. As Anna said, this is the first of what we're hoping to be an annual meeting, right? We want to give you a glimpse of what we're doing, bring you kind of on the inside. You're going to get a presentation and some dialogue that's very similar to what we do at our board meetings. We get together 3 times a year. We hear about what's going on with the organization. We talk about what's going on with the organization. And it's always an exciting time for us, and we want to share that with you. I've been involved with the organization for about 10 years now, and I never tire of these presentations and hearing about our work. I actually first came to ACA as a consultant. I was helping them explore the challenges that a small nonprofit organization with so many projects and so much work in 3 different countries with 3 different boards, how they could make it all work and how it could all function together. And I was instantly impressed with the people and their passion for the work and the scope of the work that they were doing, even with a relatively small staff and small presence. Over time, as that has grown, it's only gotten more impressive. It was, and it continues to be, that passion that defines Amazon Conservation and kept drawing me back to the organization in a number of different ways and different tasks that they had me take on with the boards and with the staff. And then finally, in a kind of a nice piece of reverse engineering, the then chairman of the board asked me to join the board. And as those of you know, in the nonprofit world, what that basically meant was I got to stop getting paid by them and start paying them for the incredible work that they do. And I thought that was a very fair exchange to make, because there's nothing better than being passionate about an organization and then having a chance to serve. And so, like all of you, I've been a supporter of Amazon Conservation for quite a few years now. As we've grown in size and impact, we've had long conversations about just how do we talk about ourselves and how do we share our work and how do we let people know what we do and the impact of what we do, and how do we get people excited about supporting an organization like Amazon Conservation. And today you're going to see some amazing examples of the work we do and the way we talk about it. And one of the things that I think is most important to think about this organization is we're not here just to protect the forest or do a singular thing. We look at the entire forest and the entire region as a system, not just an ecosystem, but as a human system and as a political system, and how we bring science and regulation to bear on making sure that we can protect those places and we can govern those places, and that the people who live there can have sustainable livelihoods. And so you're going to hear about all the different aspects of the places that we work and how we're constantly seeking holistic and sustainable solutions to create a thriving Amazon. Thanks again for your ongoing support. We're so glad that you're here. And we want to keep this dialogue going over the years. So we want to make sure that we connect and keep the conversation. So keep that in mind as you hear all of our staff present to you. Thanks. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Doug, for those inspiring remarks. Before we share some of our conservation advances that we've had this year, we also wanted to share with you all a very personalized status of the Amazon so that we can understand the threats and opportunities around the rainforest. So like Judd mentioned, something that we usually reserve for our board of directors, we want to share that directly with you, our supporters. For this, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Matt Feiner, who is the director of the Monitoring of the Andean Amazon Program, or MAP, as we call it for short, here at Amazon Conservation. Matt has a PhD from the School of Biological Sciences at Washington State University and has for the past 8 to 10 years been focused on advancing the dynamic field of real-time satellite-based threats monitoring across the Amazon. So please remember to add your questions for Matt in the chat throughout his presentation. And Matt, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. And as Anna just mentioned, I am the director of MOP, if I may say so, our cutting edge monitoring program. We actually launched 8 years ago, 2015, this monitoring program, and we are actually coming up on our 200th report, believe it or not. Sometimes it's hard for me to believe that we've cranked out 200 reports in 8 years. But we thought we would give a bit of a exclusive preview of what we lay out in this report that we'll be publishing in the next week or so. But first, a little bit of background about what is MOP. It is our satellite-based, real-time, Amazon-wide monitoring program. And I feel MOP is unique in that it is able to both identify and report on the most urgent cases anywhere in the Amazon. So we can zoom in anywhere in the vast Amazon where there's urgent deforestation happening, for example, and we can cover that precise area. But we also have this unique ability to step back and take in data and look at the entire big picture of what's happening in the Amazon. So it's really this big picture is what I'm going to focus on today, and what we really focus in on the state of the Amazon. We're using this 200th report to really look at the state of the Amazon as it looks now. So really kind of looking at this big picture in addition to what we do in tracking the most urgent cases of the day. So talking big picture, here is the most recent cloud-free view of the Amazon from space. This is recently in 2023. And some of the real good positive news to report is, despite all the bad headlines sometimes, that core Amazon still remains. You see all the dark green in the image, that's the remaining Amazon. You can see it's a bit frayed and dinged up on the sides, especially in the southeast there, but there is still that core Amazon. I'll really return to that message at the end about the importance of that the core Amazon does remain. And just that same image, just with the country boundaries, just for a little bit of perspective. Like you can see the core Amazon in dark green, stretching really over the 9 countries of the Amazon. But notice, for example, in the southeast Brazil, a lot of deforestation that we'll get into later. Southern Peru, the Arctic deforestation in Colombia, but overall, this core Amazon still remains. So we're still in this unique period of time where we still, I think, can decide the fate of the Amazon. Okay, so if we were in a room together, I think I would ask anyone raise their hand if they heard something about the Amazon tipping point in the last month. So maybe I'm just in a bubble, but I do constantly nowadays. So it's a real big topic in terms of this big picture look at the Amazon. So I really wanted to take a couple minutes and offer our unique perspective on the tipping point, because we've been analyzing it from a novel perspective. And I really want to take this opportunity to kind of see what how we're looking at things from the Amazon tipping point in terms of big picture. So just as a quick background, the Amazon, very interestingly for me, gets its moisture that maintains the rainforest from the Atlantic Ocean. And the moisture comes from the ocean, and then importantly, then through the trees and the forest, then recycles from east to west. And it recycles multiple times, 6, 7, 8 times, going from the eastern Amazon all the way to the west. So that's basically how the rainforest is maintained. So over recently, scientists have started to postulate, well, as Amazon deforestation increases and this recycling gets disrupted, could there be an impact to the rainforest? And that's the general concept behind the tipping point, is that in a theoretical framework, the number is not concrete, set in stone, but just to put a number out there for now, for example, about the number I see most often is around 25% deforestation. If the Amazon loses 25% deforestation, that this recycling from east to west of the moisture could be disrupted. Rainfall would go down to a threshold below which could not support rainforest, and you would have this transition from rainforest to savanna. That, in a nutshell, is the tipping point. So we set off to analyze this tipping point phenomenon from our own perspective. And so the first thing that we did is, I think this is a rather underrated piece of work that we did, I always like to show it when I can, is we reconstructed the original Amazon. We took archived satellite imagery and a number of other sources and came up with this, our interpretation, our estimation of the original Amazon. So you can see there's only 3 categories. It's forest, non-forest, which in this case would not be deforestation because it's the original Amazon, but this would be original savanna, grasslands, and then water, and that's it. So this is our original Amazon. So on top of that, we then analyzed the historical deforestation and overlaid that on the original Amazon and came up with this. This was actually one of the questions that we got from one of the participants on this call, from Germany, I believe, asking about historic deforestation. And this is our estimate, 13% of the historical Amazon, the original Amazon, is gone. So you can see that total, this is historic deforestation from as far as we can measure in red. So 13%, so you could say on a positive note that, well, it's well below 25%, so we're good for a while. But then this is where we offered a novel twist to the whole story, is keeping in mind how the tipping point concept works, where you have moisture coming from the east to the west. We've been putting forward that not all deforestation is created equal, actually. So deforestation in Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, while bad for many other reasons, such as biodiversity and carbon and such, isn't as weighted as heavily as deforestation in the East, given that is where the recycling system is starting. And so we're giving a weighted importance to deforestation in the East, because that's the deforestation that's going to cut off this recycling of moisture from east to west. So then what we did, I haven't seen anyone else do this yet, even though it seems straightforward or it seems practical, is we then divided the Amazon into parts. So in this example, into thirds, which you can see by the vertical black and white lines. And in this scenario, we came up with a very different number, where in the eastern third, and where the ocean is just meeting just where that recycling system is starting, we came up with a very different number. Instead of 13%, it got flipped and it's 31%, which is all of a sudden above that. Again, the 25% threshold is not concrete. It's a hypothesis. It's just based on conceptual modeling. But we are above that postulated threshold, which basically indicates that if there isn't tipping point impact, we could be nearing it soon. And I think we're starting to see the possible impacts of a looming tipping point, for example, in the southeast Brazilian Amazon. We're kind of seeing some dire warning signs that it could emerge. So this is the important thing to really remember is in terms of the geographical importance of the deforestation. So that all brings up to the critical question I wanted to focus on here is like, so how do we avoid this tipping point? Because like I said, I really think we're still in some of the last years and decade of really being able to avoid this scenario. So I have a number of reasons. I have a number of factors. Three I just wanted to throw out here is I think it's very important to view the Amazon as a whole, just in terms of the Western Amazon depends on the Eastern Amazon for its moisture, as we just said. But then even the other way around, the Eastern Amazon then depends on the Western Amazon for the water flows, for example. So if you have mercury contamination in the West, it could flow to the East. So really looking at the Amazon as an entire system. Secondly, got to stop deforestation. I think that's really the resounding call now that we're hearing from a lot of scientists, really trying to ramp up these zero deforestation campaigns. And the third that I really want to emphasize for the remaining of my talk is protect that core Amazon. And this is one of our key strategies. So we're obviously doing the viewing the whole Amazon with our MOP work. Stopping deforestation, it's kind of the basis of why we do our real-time monitoring of the most urgent cases. But we're also increasingly really trying to protect the core of the Amazon. So revisiting that cloud-free image that I showed before, showing that core Amazon still remains. Here I'm adding an additional map to the right, showing probably a big reason of why that core remains, and that is there is a large amount of protected areas, which are illustrated here in green, and indigenous territories in brown. So you really have this anchoring to the core Amazon of these protected areas and indigenous territories, which really gives this core Amazon a real chance to survive. And kind of zooming in on that map with protected areas and indigenous territories, you can see that combined, what's the math there? Something like 360 million hectares protected areas and indigenous territories, nearly half, 43% of the Amazon. But you can just see how it's really strategically located in the core Amazon. So this is we'll be hearing a little bit more of this in other presentations, but this is just a real emerging as an important line of our work in terms of really making sure on lockdown we have protected areas, indigenous territories, and really trying to make sure that they serve as this core. And one other, and just to throw a little graph up there, these are deforestation rates over the last 5 years, where you can see protected areas in green, indigenous territories in yellow compared to the surrounding areas. And so just much lower deforestation historically in protected areas and indigenous territories. And then one other final note final positive note that I want to leave you all with is in that core Amazon, there are still abundant carbon reserves in terms of thinking about the implications for climate change. So this is a map that we prepared using NASA's JEDI data. So this was a sensor on the International Space Station that basically it was a laser beam. So you can see the data is very laser-like with these lines that basically just started measuring the above ground carbon. And getting into the green, dark green, purple is where we're getting our first real good look at where above ground carbon is concentrated in the Amazon. And surprisingly for me anyway, we saw a real high concentration in the Northeast, also in the Southwest, where Amazon conservation works heavily on the ground is important, and also in the Northwest. But really just getting this look of all the abundant carbon reserves that still are remaining. And as a final image to share as I wrap up, this is a map that actually just came out yesterday. Just newly released a new carbon data set put out by the satellite company Planet. So now we have basically 2 independent data sets. So of course, confusingly, they flip the colors. So now, whereas the highest carbon values on the left are the greens and purples, now you have to switch it so it's the yellows, but you can kind of see the point that it's really remarkable for me to see this convergence of the data. You can again see the high carbon values in the Northeast, really high in the Southwest and Southern Peru, where Amazon conservation concentrates, and even a bit in the Ecuadorian rainforest as well, and even some in the indigenous territories in the Southeast. So we're really looking to work a lot more with these emerging carbon data sets to really be able to combine deforestation with carbon and really kind of understand the full, not only the full picture, not only for deforestation, but also carbon and climate change. With that, I think that is my final. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for this enlightening presentation. And thank you, Catherine, as well from Germany, for your question about the original state of the Amazon. I agree with Matt that it's very encouraging that we still have 87% of the original Amazon left to protect. So that's important work. And now that we have a better understanding of what's happening across the Amazon, we can begin the conversation on how exactly are we addressing these threats and moving conservation forward in the region. So for this, I'll be joined by our president, John Beavers. And John has been our president since 2019 and has been instrumental in developing our new strategic focus and the vision for the organization. So we'll touch on that for a brief moment in a couple of minutes. We'll also count on the special appearance from Nadia Mamani, our resident expert on all things remote sensing and geographic information systems, or GIS, and who is also a native of the Peruvian Amazon that she actually helps protect and monitor every day for deforestation and threats. And last but not least, we'll also be joined by one of our local scientists in the Peruvian Amazon, Ruth Mary Pilko, who joins us from our sister organization, Conservación Amazónica ACA. And Ruth Mary has been honored as a National Geographic Explorer for her expertise, and she'll be sharing information about one of our key climate change programs in the Andean Amazon, focusing on a very vulnerable species called the Andean bear. So, John, please take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Anna. So there are so many things that we could actually be talking about today, but what we'd like to do is give you a brief overview of our strategy. And then, as Anna said, Nadia, Ruth Mary, and myself will take you through some of the conservation work. We'll go a little deeper into what we actually do. So you could move the slide, please. So as many of you know, in 1999, Amazon Conservation started our work there in the Southwest Amazon. You can see the map in front of you, where the Andes Mountains meet the Amazon rainforest. There's our two sister organizations, ACA, known as their acronym in Peru, and ASEA in Bolivia, have been working hard ever since and have had some great results on the ground over these past 23 years. At the same time, there have been a lot of lessons learned in the way to carry out conservation too. And so in 2020, we developed a new strategy that was going to build on the great work that we've done, but take a more strategic approach to what we need to be doing in the Amazon now in the 21st century. And there's just two things I want to draw your attention to. First, what we've done, and you can see the map here, we really had to work at scale. And so we began to grow our coverage of the area we're going to work in by 10 times. And we cover about 50 million hectares in this map that you see here, which is an area about the size of the state of California. And the other thing that's important to keep in mind is that the diversity within this area of the different ecosystems, the cultures, and the rest required that we had different approaches in different parts of the area. So I won't go through all of it, but just a few of the major attributes there are, if you look at that light green part of the map, of the pop-out map there, it says iconic landscapes. This is one of the areas of almost some of the most highest biodiversity in the world. And Manu National Park that you see on the Peru side and Madidi National Park that you see on the Bolivia side are two of the most highly biodiverse parks, not only in the Amazon, but worldwide. So can't say enough about the importance of that. Also, this is home to many different indigenous cultures, and one of these groups is the uncontacted indigenous peoples that are represented in that kind of tan area there, and not to mention other indigenous groups that are kind of habitate throughout this entire area. Also, and you can see in that green area, this is one of the most productive forests, economically speaking, in the Amazon. Just from this green area, 85% of all the Brazil nuts in the world are produced right there. And that's just one of the many products, forest-based products that actually come out of that area. And then finally, we are in the headwaters of the Amazon, and you can see in that light gray area there are really fragile Andean ecosystems. Our water flows from there. Once it gets to there from the Atlantic, as Matt showed, and the Amazonian River Basin starts way up here in the high Andes. Not to mention that this is a place very important in terms of indigenous culture. The indigenous people have been living and thriving and producing there since the time of the Incas. So if you could move on to next slide, please. So our approach, our approach is basically threefold based on this new strategy. And so if you could hit the first one, please. The first is we've always focused on protecting wild places, and a little bit like what Matt mentioned, being able to have core protected areas is key to conservation. So we've been helping to set up protected areas in indigenous territories ever since our beginning, and I'll touch a little more on that in a moment. Next, please. To do this, we do this through empowering people. And there are two aspects of this work. For us, it is so important that the people in the Amazon are thriving economically. And so a big piece of what we're doing is what we call building a forest-based economy, and some of those attributes I just showed you earlier, and are helping communities and the government to be able to build a real forest-based economy that supports long-term development that's sustainable and climate smart. The second part, and this is something that we really jumped into about starting 10 years ago, is fighting illegal deforestation. So a major part of our work that we've been developing over those last 10 years is to focus on combating nature crime and working with local communities, indigenous communities, local producer groups, and also national park systems to be able to protect those lands and territories from illegal deforestation. This is all backed up by science. And so if you can click it there. There we go. Our work there is shored up by a very strong base in science. Our founders started, we're scientists who founded the organization. And since then, we've been building the Andes Amazon Observatory, which focuses on providing science for looking at ecological health, biodiversity health, ecosystem health, human health, issues around climate. And a lot of this is the underpinnings of this comes out of our biological research stations, three of which we began in Peru many years ago. Ruth Mary will be speaking from one of those this afternoon. And our newest research station, which is in partnership with the University of the Amazon in Bolivia. And then finally, we put technology to use in the work that we're doing. Matt gave a great overview of our MOP work, but we also use technology in a lot of the science we're doing. And Nadia, in a moment, will touch a little more on the work that we're doing in MOP. So the final thing I want to tell you, if you could next, please, is that the last part of our strategy, we realized, and we've always realized, that we cannot do this work alone. Partnerships are a key piece of making conservation happen, not only in the Amazon, but anywhere in the world. And we realized that there were a lot of great on-the-ground conservation organizations like ACA and ASEA throughout the Amazon, and that there was a real need to be able to share knowledge, share capacities, build initiatives together in order to build a much more united front against not only the challenges and threats to conservation or to the area, but also to build stronger conservation across the region. So imagine, if you will, and Matt had showed this a little bit, and I want to reflect back on Matt's point on the core. These kind of brownish and green, light green areas or protected areas, indigenous territories, making up half of the Amazon. So just being able to make conservation happen better just in that area, united with partners across the region, is probably one of the most important things that all of us can be doing in terms of making conservation happen in the Amazon. So in a nutshell, all of that together is what our strategy is laid out for us here for the next 10 years. So if we could move on, please. So I'm going to touch on, before I pass this off to Nadia, on our Protecting Wild Places work. Next. Next, please. So to date, we have helped establish, manage, and protect over 9 million acres of protected areas and indigenous territories. And this work is something that requires you to be in place for a very long time, because it can take years to develop these protected areas, working with the government, working with local communities to make sure that different types of protected areas support their development and well-being. It takes a very long time. And what we've been able to accomplish to date is an area that covers, just to give you a little bit of an idea, of an area that's a little bigger than the size of the country of Belgium. We're about 8 Grand Canyons for those from the Western United States. Next, please. So in the pipeline, still, we have about 2.3 million hectares more, or acres more to go. And what we do is based on the need for the ecosystems, based on the value that these places have for biodiversity, based on the cultural aspects. Those are the kind of the founding principles for the protected areas that we're supporting governments and local people to do. So I want to take you through very quickly, if you can go to the next slide, please, to 3 examples of the types of protected areas we have, because I think people think just about biodiversity when they hear parks or protected areas or conservation areas. So one that we just completed about 3 years ago, it took 10 years to happen, was the 165,000 acre Ausangate Reserve. This houses the world's largest tropical glacier called Quelccaya. And this is an extremely important area, not only for the management of water, but also for the traditional way of life for the indigenous peoples living in and around this zone. Next, please. And I think my favorite is the Marcapata Koyana Agrobiodiversity Zone. This was set up to support the conservation and management of the traditional indigenous production taking place in the Andes. And this is actually like a living germplasm bank. You hear about all of these seed banks that are being put away, or putting seeds away. And this is actually one that continues to produce those seeds, and through the production and the local culture is able to keep this huge variety of agricultural products going. This just represents a few of the 99 potatoes, for example, that just come out of this single area, 25 varieties of corn, and a variety of other things as well. Next, please. Then the last one is the Arroyo Bahia, which we helped, ASEA helped the local government in Cobija in the Bolivian Amazon establish. This is a small area. It's 9,000 acres. However, it sits over the major water source for this city, which is the biggest city in the Bolivian Amazon. So it supports about 80,000 people. And so all of the conservation areas that we're helping to set up have multiple uses and provide multiple services to the people that we're working with. And as we hear and see the impacts more of climate change, the importance of these areas becomes even more evident. For example, you might be reading about the drought that has been hitting the Amazon, and Arroyo Bahia is clearly the type of thing that you need to be able to protect drinking water for agriculture, and the rest when climate and weather changes. So I'll leave it at that. And I have one last thing before passing this on to Nadia. One last thing, and I just want to touch on this for a moment, is our expansion of our work into the Amazon savannas. So you might have seen that back there on Matt's map. This is one of the big natural grasslands in Bolivia. One of the most unique in the world. If you any of you who have read 1491, the book, this is the book starts here. The importance of this place, not only for the unique ecosystems, but also for the water here is really key. Some of the biggest wetlands in the entire world are also found in this place. And overall, with our step into working in the area, we've accomplished two really important things to date. One is working with the governor's office in the Department of Beni, where this sits. We were able to help set up a plan for conservation for the department, which helps not only guide conservation, but the sustainable development of the area. And then if you can go to the next one, please. And one of I think the most important things out of all of that we've done is we helped set up a region-wide fire prevention initiative and strategy for the government and all of the local people there to be able to fight the effects of major fires that go through that area. If any of you follow our MOP fire work that we do during the fire season, you will see this part of the Amazon, these grasslands that are burning quite a lot. The grasslands burn over often, and being able to figure out how to manage that is a key piece of what we're doing. So I will leave it there and go to empowering people. So I want to. So Nadia has been working very closely with a group of indigenous people that we work with in Peru, and has been supporting them with defending their territory. So I'm going to pass this off to Nadia so she can give us a little review of what's going on there.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Anna, for the introduction. Next slide, please. Well, our work is focused on supporting them and empowering local communities in Peru, but also we work across the Amazon. We work with indigenous groups, local communities, government, and including also other NGOs to build sustainable and resilient livelihoods and to protect their territory, which is the Amazon. Today, I'm thrilled to share with all you our work with an indigenous community named FENAMAD. FENAMAD is the acronym for Native Federation of the Madre de Dios River and Tributaries. This indigenous federation is based in Madre de Dios region in the southern Peruvian Amazon. Actually, this is where I'm from. We are supporting them in the protection of their ancestral territories from threats like illegal gold mining, logging, and land invasion, which is more common nowadays. Next, please. How do we do that? Well, one of our key tools that allow us to do this is our real-time monitoring program, NOAA's MAP, that my colleague Matt Feiner just presented. It has three main components, as you can see. The first one, through the application of satellite technology, we are able to track deforestation and identify illegal acts to quickly detect them as they occur, making enforcement operations more timely and impactful. We also provide tools, training, and building capacities to government and indigenous groups that need to better monitor and manage their natural resources. Then we have the reporting. We deliver actionable information to government and indigenous groups to work together to reduce threats to the forest, to improve the context for conservation, and to apply the law, which lead us to the third component, the action by the government, such as the measures taken to stop deforestation, like an intervention in the ground, or policies and regulations created to reduce deforestation. We have several successful stories across the Amazon, but now I want to show you one, our work with an indigenous community, Barranco Chico, which is located in Peru. These entire three components are working together and feedback by each one from the monitoring results that we share with our on-the-ground partners, the Indigenous Federation, the information that community members share with us indicating the areas of highest priorities, to the information that also comes from the government after an interdiction, help us this information to analyze the action efficiency and the dynamic of the dispersion, the displacement of the illicit groups. Next, please. Here, this is an example of a confidential report submitted to the Indigenous Federation This report includes precise information about where the illegal activity is happening, what is the latest displacement of the miners, and the location of the deforestation hotspots and its coordinates. Here on the right, you can see a very high resolution image, 50 centimeters, that shows where the equipment and the mining camps are located and how many are there. Next, please. After we share this actionable information with our indigenous partner, they meet with the indigenous community to discuss the feasibility of a criminal complaint. And there is when the complaint for crimes against natural resources is created and handed over to the Environmental Prosecutor's Office for investigation. They respond by sending a letter, as shown on the right, which turns out to be an investigation case. Next, please. With all this evidence provided, the government execute 3 on-the-ground interventions in the indigenous community, Barranco Chico, our emblematic case, and also destroyed mining machinery, accessories, and tools valued in several million of US dollars. Also, a part of those actions, they arrested 3 people that currently are in preventive detention. Next, please. Finally, I don't want to end this presentation without answering, in my opinion, an important question. What are the indigenous community achieving, receiving with all this work? First, in the field, I need to highlight that there is a significant reduction of illegal deforestation caused by gold mining as a result of those complaints and subsequent interdiction executed by the government, as well as the community leadership in confronting this threat. Second, strengthen their legal defense capabilities against environmental crimes in their indigenous territories. And third, we promote the protection of environmental defenders. And here in a small story, this year I visited one indigenous community in my hometown in Madre de Dios. And after presenting our latest finding about illegal mining in the territory, they told me, Nadia, we are ready to fight. And this is not the first time. So we recognize and know that they are going to fight to protect their territories and their rights. We know that. They are survived on their lands for many, many years. So what we are also doing is to provide them with technology and information to minimize their exposure to those risks. It is essential for us to mitigate risk in environmental defense work to prevent community leaders and members from these being exposed to illicit groups. It wouldn't be possible without our sister organizations and partners in the ground, all this work. Well, that's it from me. Thank you very much for the space.
Thank you so much, Nadia. That was great. So before moving on to Ruth Moretti, I want to touch on the other piece of our empowering people work. And I think in another meeting, it would be great to go further into this. But just as a quick overview, a major piece of our work is figuring out a way that people can have a real sustainable development of their forests. And we're doing that through helping local people to improve not only their capacity to produce, but to maintain their economic well-being. And we do this through a myriad of ways of making this happen. One, from supporting their ability to produce better. 2, to be able to be better situated in the market so they get a more equitable and fair share of the market itself. Looking at ways that provide solutions to the changes in climate and other issues that are affecting the area so that they can continue to produce and be much more resilient in front of the issues of climate change. The other aspect of this, next please, that just amazes me is by supporting these communities to do this work, the amount of innovation in these communities is amazing. A lot besides just producing Brazil nuts or acai or other products. A lot of the effort, and this is just one of the women's group in the area, is put into how to add value to these products and have other byproducts that actually can be sold in the market. So just like this women's group there's innovation going across many of the many of the community organizations that are out there. And so being able to provide the support that gets things, it provides much better capacity for them to produce and be better situated more equitably in the market is a key, because the innovation that comes out of these communities really is amazing and really is part of the future for these folks. So next, please. So the last thing before passing this on to Ruth Mary is to talk a little bit about our science and technology. And I just want to throw very quickly two little points in here about some of the work we're doing. Next, please. So one of the things that we've begun to develop is what we call our Climate Change and Amazonian Fruits Observatory. This is connected to the productive forests work that we're doing in Bolivia, and is focused on providing information on impacts from climate, information regarding the ecological health of the forests that are being produced from, providing information on the health of the products themselves. And this is helping not only the local communities, but governments and others to make the right decisions about how to truly maintain a sustainable path here for these forests. And it also is even more important now, given the changes that are coming in weather from the impacts from climate, which requires us to be much more especially focused on this type of work. The second one, next please, is during the pandemic, which is the right time to do this, was the establishment of our genomics lab at the Los Amigos research spot in Peru, where we're focusing on the transmission of diseases between wildlife and people. And the work that comes out of this area really supports a few things. One, it's the health of wildlife. The second, it's human health. And the third, even though we're looking for potential ways that pandemics can begin, pandemic level diseases, we're also supporting, which is very important for this region, the local health issues that come up, such as malaria and dengue. So this is a key piece of not only the conservation science, but the human health science that we're trying to support throughout the region. And now I will pass it on to Ruth Mary. And Ruth Mary, I just want to say, we're so glad you could make it. We know you're out there in the middle of the woods right now, trying to pursue various Andean bears. But it's great to have you here, and I will pass this on to Ruth Mary so she can talk about our Andean bear project.
Okay, thanks Anna, thanks John for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here and I'll tell you a little bit about what we are doing here in the southeast of Peru. As John was mentioning, we are located in the southeast Peru at the entrance of Manu National Park. Conservación Amazónica ACA has 3 biological stations that are situated across the altitudinal gradients. And why is this important? As Matt was mentioning, we are in a tipping point for climate change. So it's very important to understand first, how is the flora, how is the fauna, how is the plants and animals are moving, and what we can do to build our resilience. So in this way, Conservación Amazónica ACA are part of the initiative called Climate Corridors, where we are working to build a climate resilience for nature and people. What involved to do different surveys. So since 2021, we've been building a baseline of movement for fauna across the gradients in the Coxñipata Valley, from the lowland part, like from 200 meters of elevation up to 400 meters of elevation. So we are working with a key species that is called the Andean bear. Maybe you saw the movie called Paddington Bear. So the Andean bear was the inspiration for the creation of Paddington. And the Andean bear is key because it's also a vulnerable species. His population is declining over the time, but also is an icon. For the Andean people, it's very special animal. So that's help us for us to work with this species. So next, please. So what we are doing is we want to understand like how the bears are using the altitudinal gradients, how they are moving, how is their pattern, what they are eating, and how it is going to be affected by climate change. So one of the key things to know is what the bears are eating, no? What the plants that they are eating across the gradients, across the seasons. So for that, I have a team here at Waikecha where we are looking for bear scats. So the bear scat for biologists is very important because it gives us a lot of information. So we can know what the bears are eating. And with that information, we can do restoration projects. But also, we've been using camera traps across the altitudinal gradients, and thanks to these cameras, we were able to identify over 35 bear individuals. So far, this is a good sign that the bear population is healthy on this part of Manu. But also with the camera trap, we were able to identify over 43 species of animals, medium to big size, including 7 species of cats, like the jaguar, the puma, the uncilla, the Andean cat, and others. So this part is key. Next. So something we implemented recently is a thing called telemetry, where we place satellite collars on Andean bears. So for that, we all have a expert team built with veterinarian, biologists, local people, with all the careful procedures, we place these collars on the bears. So far we have 2 bears with collars, and thanks to them, we've been learning a lot. So as you can see on the map, you can see this red line. These are the movements of the bears. The blue for Ruru and the red for Sunchu. So bears doesn't know about boundaries. They use a big landscape. So one bear, for example, needs at least 100 kilometers square to live, to find its food, to reproduce. So connectivity is very, very important in this case. The map can show the bears been using National Park, it's been using Waikecha, it's been using about 7 different communities and moving across the gradient. So that's why it's very important to work connectivity, to work with people, and also to build climate corridors across the gradient. Next. Next, please. Yeah. So as I said, we are also working with the Andean people. We partner with different initiatives like the Acción Andina. So in the last 2 years, we've been able to plant about 150 different tree species native for the area, and also plant that are food for the bear. And this year, we're aiming to plant over 100,000 trees. So why is this important? It's very important because we are helping to restore degraded lands in the grassland area. These areas are key areas, because they are key areas for bears, but also for people because they provide water. And as climate change is shifting upwards, plants are moving upwards, animals are moving upwards, grassland are going to be key for this movement. So how we can establish a cloud forest in the grassland, for example. So there are many of the questions we are going to answer next. Next, please. So we are also working on the environmental education. Last year, we were able to open our Bear Interpretation Center. That is just 5 minutes from Waikecha Biological Station. It's a bilingual area where we bring local people, schools, national, international visitors to the area. And the aim is for them to learn about the Andean bear, but also about the cloud forest. So far, we were able to receive over 400 visitors in our Bear Interpretation Center, but also we received 10 schools. So with the schools, we have a special program where we are forming conservation ambassadors. School children came to Waikecha, like a group with their parents, and they stay here for 2 nights, where they have different activities, including visiting the bear center, the canopy walkway, they interact with the scientists, and the key in that is to build this connectivity again between people and nature, and also within the family. So that's something what we are doing here since from Waikecha, no? And that's the reason why the bears are very important, because they are helping us to understand, no, the need of connectivity, and also the need to work with people and different organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth Mary and Nadia and John, for these great advances in conservation. I think it's inspiring to see how, despite the challenges that Matt highlighted, that we're continuing to move conservation forward year after year. So now we have a few minutes, maybe to take 2 or 3 questions from the audience. And we actually have already received some great questions in the registration forms that you submitted, as well as in the chat here. So unfortunately, we'll only be able to take a couple of questions, like I mentioned, here live, but we'll also follow up with some of the answers to these questions after the webinar as well. So John, we have a question from Michelle from the UK on our work in Brazil. Have there been positive changes since Lula won the election, or is it too early to say? And I'll combine that also with a question from Denise here from Virginia on how is the political leadership in Amazonian countries affecting their political willingness to protect the Amazon. So John, if you can just explain a little bit about how we are making progress in these countries, regardless of which administration in power, that would be great.
Yeah, great. Great questions. And I think for the Amazon in the world, that is always the question. And I will say for Brazil, I think with the entrance of Lula, there have been huge changes. There has been a major reduction in deforestation just since he showed up, because the government is beginning to apply the laws that already exist in Bolivia, and pulling back on these policies of agricultural expansion into the area. So there's been a major reduction since his coming in. But I think the other piece of that too is the leadership that Brazil has for the Amazon, since it's really in the center of the Amazon. And Lula has really moved things forward, showing the commitment that Brazil has, the Brazilian government has, to move forward on everything from climate to their climate commitments, to the commitments to zero deforestation in the Amazon. And I think the fact that they put together in Belém there in one of the state capitals there in Brazil just a few months ago, the meeting between the countries and the declaration that came out of there about everything they want to do, from illegal activities to policy and the rest, I think is a really positive thing. So I think people in the region are really excited about that. I just want to say one last thing about government, though. The good thing is governments are not a monolith, and even under the Bolsonaro government, previously, when we were working to support indigenous communities to stop some illegal gold mining, the federal police actually acted even under the Bolsonaro administration. So us working with state level actors, different agencies in the government, is a key piece of the work. It's not always just a monolith of one way.
Yes, I think it's definitely important to know that regardless of the political situation in these countries, we are still working with the government in whatever level is necessary for us to move conservation forward. So thank you, John. And Matt, we also have a question on the tipping point from one of our supporter and board member, Bishop Sheehan. When you show the map on the Amazon divided into thirds, the question is, can the Eastern Amazon turn to savanna, but the other 2/3 remain forests?
I don't have to vote no on that one, unfortunately. I think the concept of the tipping point really is that the Western forests depend on the Eastern forest for the recycling, and you're just not going to get the sufficient moisture recycling from the savanna. So I think that's the fear, is that I think that's like the exact concept, actually, is like the forest in the east converts to savanna, and then the recycling shuts down, and then it impacts the west. So I think if we see that, it's hard to imagine a scenario where the Western forest survives and there's Eastern savanna. So I think that's really gets to that whole of Amazon. Look at the whole Amazon and folks in Peru and Bolivia, their rainforests really depend on what's happening in Brazil. If I could just quickly add, just to jump on the last questions too, it's just the data we're seeing, we're actually doing our own independent look now, but I've been seeing shocking numbers like 50% reduction in deforestation through August so far under Lula. And so very, very encouraging. It's still 50% too high for us, but it's still a shocking decrease in terms of the deforestation we were seeing as recently as last year. And I actually just saw a report yesterday about deforestation in Colombia going down as well. So we're actually, in preparation for the COP meetings, we're actually kind of looking at the 2023 data ourselves right now for an independent look. But in terms of the countries with the highest governance right now, or the most pro-environment governments, both Colombia and Brazil, we're seeing these massive reductions. So I think we are seeing the importance of top-down, or at least a presidential level interest in preserving the Amazon. Over.
Yes, I think absolutely it's very vital to have that top-down interest and policies really to curb deforestation. But I agree with you that 50% is still 50% deforestation, and we still need to address that. So we also have maybe our last question before we turn it over to our closing speaker. John, maybe this one is for you. This is from our longtime supporter, Drew Harper in Minnesota, which I think it's a great question. What is the opportunity or program that you're most excited about, but unfortunately have not been able to put as many resources against as you would like?
Boy, that's Drew, thank you for that question. That's a hard question to answer. There's more than one. But I will say one thing that I'm seeing is the most important thing we need to be doing as time goes on, and that's being able to invest in our ability to expand across geographies, and to be able to invest in the work we're building partnerships with others, and being able to leverage their resources as well is kind of a key strategy to be able to stretch the funding that comes in. So partnership for us is a key piece of this in terms of that strategy to be able to stretch that. But having said that, I think kind of going back to what Matt showed there at the beginning, stopping illegal deforestation stopping deforestation is the key piece. Our major focus there is stopping the illegal part of deforestation, which is crucial for protected areas and indigenous peoples and the rest. So that's one of those. I think for the ability to be able to expand to those partners and leverage the work that others are doing in the region through our real-time monitoring and through our expertise that we really gained on the ground in Peru, working with government and local peoples, is probably one of the things that we need to be investing in the most. Just a little shout out to science. The work that Ruth Mary does, and much of the work that we provide, or the scientific input we provide on climate, ecological health, and the rest, is always key. And so science is always traditionally, I think, in conservation organizations, been also one of the hardest things to fund. So sorry, I couldn't keep it down to one, but I would say those are the two key areas for us.
Yes, I think definitely there's a lot of different projects that we're doing. As you all know, we are not we are a very tailored conservation organization with our efforts adapting to the needs of the region. So of course, we have a lot of programs that we'd love to fund. Well, thank you everyone for your great questions and a great conversation. Just for the sake of time, we will also answer the questions in the chat that have been asked so far. But sadly, we're getting towards the end of our time together. And I wanted to save some time also for our closing remarks from the ever-inspiring Bruce Babbitt. Bruce has served as the governor of Arizona, as well as the Secretary of the Interior. He is, among many things, a geologist, an attorney, a geophysics expert, and most of all, a true friend of Amazon conservation. He has been on our board of directors, helping us guide our conservation work since we began as an organization over 20 years ago. So thank you, Bruce, for being here, and take it away.
Thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to join all of you today and to hear a really wonderful presentation from all of the participants. I've learned about the Amazon during the time that I was Secretary of the Interior, I had the opportunity to meet with heads of state and national ministers, kind of at the 30,000-foot level. And what I began to understand during that time was that this was all good and necessary, but that ultimately we weren't really going to be successful unless we did a much better effort of connecting with the people who actually live in the forest, who depend upon it for their livelihood, and whose support is ultimately going to make the difference. So when I left Interior in the year 2000, I began looking around across the entire region to see where I could devote my efforts moving forward. Well, it was clear to me that it would be in this area of getting down to the ground level, empowering, educating, informing, and involving all the local groups, the indigenous groups, the forest people, the local environmental organizations. And that led me to Peru and Bolivia, where from the beginning, we formed connections and real partnerships with two national organizations, Conservación Amazónica in Peru and a group called ASEA in Bolivia. And for the last 20 years, we've learned a lot as we begin to not come in and parachute from way up, but actually get boots on the ground, working with people, fostering and supporting and empowering national organizations, indigenous groups. I'm really satisfied and grateful for the progress that's being made in putting these networks together and providing the support to the people on the ground. The most interesting example among many is what Matt and Nadia have talked about today. At the science level, Matt gave you a marvelous presentation about the use of satellite monitoring and interpretation. There are a lot of people doing that across the Amazon. And most of it goes into research articles that are read by scientists across the world. But what's really unique about what Matt is doing is we are connecting with local groups who have the power to use that information in real time. Yeah, when an illegal mining operation starts up, as Nadia explained, that information doesn't go to a science journal. It goes to the people on the ground who have the capacity and the connections with local officials to actually do something, to prosecute, to mobilize opposition. Well, that's the connective power of empowering grassroots people. And it's working in all the other ways that you see, with the local economies in which we're connecting local agriculture into a national and international marketing system. So these are really gratifying things that are going on now. Of course, as John suggested, what we really need to do to further these partnerships, to spread across the ground level, to empower all of these groups, is support. And we are, of course, very grateful to those of you out there who have given us that support over all of these years. And from my experience over the last 20 years, let me say, thank you. You've helped make a real difference. You've been part of a movement which is coming out from the 30,000-foot level and putting together this on-the-ground piece. So I guess my final ask is thank you. We appreciate your support. Please help us going forward in the future. But again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you again to all of our speakers today. We want to also thank you all for attending and participating and remind you that this is an ongoing conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on this inaugural update webinar so that we can have more spaces like these for you in the future. Once you close this Zoom, a survey will pop up asking for your feedback. So please do take a couple of minutes just to complete it and let us know what your thoughts are. We'll also be sending a copy of the survey when we send you the presentation and the recording of this webinar via email. Thank you again for your participation and, like Bruce mentioned, for your loyal support in protecting our forests. See you next time.